Carrie Lam says things are great in Hong Kong. Trump challenges the World Bank on China. And good news, book burning is back. That and more on this week's China Uncensored. This is China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. This week's China News headlines. The Communist Party has lost Hong Kong. I know, it's a shock. Who knew massively oppressing people would make them hate you? Apparently, this was news to Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam. According to the Epoch Times, Carrie Lam thought pro-Beijing politicians would definitely win the recent local election in Hong Kong. They did not. But even though the pro-democracy side won big, that has not stopped the protests. This was Hong Kong this past Sunday.
A sea of black as vast crowds of protesters took to the streets of Hong Kong's financial district on Sunday in the biggest rallies since local elections last month. It was the first time since August that the Civil Human Rights Front, organiser of million-strong marches earlier in the year that paralysed the Asian Finance Centre, had received authorities' permission for a rally. It estimated turnout of 800,000.
Wow, 800,000 people. But Carrie Lam was quick to respond with hurricane-force spin. The massive protests, she says, are a sign that everything is fine.
This reflects the freedoms that Hong Kong people are enjoying. And so I hope that this phenomenon will go also to abroad to show that Hong Kong is upholding all the rights and freedoms of Hong Kong people. So all those accusations from various quarters that we are eroding people's freedoms is unsubstantiated.
Right? Right? 6 months of continuous protests show there's absolutely nothing wrong in Hong Kong. Here's another bad sign. One of the protesters' 5 demands is an independent investigation into police brutality. The Hong Kong government refused. They said, we don't need an independent investigation into the police. We already have an organization to watch the police, the Independent Police Complaints Council, or IPCC. See, it says independent right there in the name. The only problem is that it can't do its job. It can't call witnesses. It can't make the police give up evidence. In fact, it can't even take complaints against the police. People have to submit complaints against the police, who then definitely pass those complaints on to the IPCC. A group of foreign experts was recruited to make sure the IPCC's police investigation was objective. Well, they just resigned.
You can see that the international expert panel, the members of the international expert panels all resigned from the IPCC or from this panel before the publication of the interim report. This is a very crucial act, and you can see that it is like a vote of non-confidence to this report.
But the fact that people can freely criticize the report is a sign that freedoms are doing fine in Hong Kong, right? Meanwhile, the Hong Kong police have been going on a PR binge, accusing people of spreading fake news, photographing hard-working riot police eating in full gear on the street, and duct taping a tear gas canister to the wall, just like that banana art installation. They really need to fire their new PR guy. A Hong Kong democracy protester says he was ambushed by masked Chinese men in Australia. If only Australia had the kind of freedoms Hong Kong does. Meanwhile, Taiwan's top diplomat said Taiwan will help if the Chinese military cracks down in Hong Kong. Sadly, he did not mean Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen would go full Rambo. He meant that if people start fleeing from Hong Kong, Taiwan is going to work with the international community to provide necessary assistance to those who are displaced by the violence there. Wow, I can see why he's the top diplomat. That was very diplomatic and boring, especially considering the new claims that the Chinese Communist Party is meddling in Taiwan's election, the presidential elections coming up on January 11th, 2020. A Chinese defector said 2 Hong Kong executives with close ties to the Chinese military were involved in manipulating Taiwan's elections. That manipulation included a multi-pronged effort to finance pro-Beijing candidates, buy off voters, and sow disinformation on television channels and on the internet. Sorry, Putin, you're no longer the world's best election meddler. The World Bank is an organization that lends money at low interest rates to help developing countries. Apparently, that somehow also includes China. Yes, China, the world's second biggest economy, the country that has so much cash to spare that it lends hundreds of billions of dollars to other countries through its Belt and Road Initiative. Well, President Donald Trump has called out the World Bank for lending to China. This was after the World Bank said it would lend China $1 to $1.5 billion in low-interest loans through June 2025. The U.S. government had objected to that plan, but the World Bank went through with it anyway. But get this. This is actually a decrease in lending to China. In 2017, the World Bank lent China $2.4 billion. Maybe they wouldn't need so many loans if they used more money to help people in China instead of propping up dictators around the world. But gosh, what do I know? And when I said use more money to help people in China, I did not mean finance more human rights violations. Just wanted to clear that up because China apparently tried to get the World Bank to fund surveillance in Xinjiang. Xinjiang is the region where China has locked up more than 1 million ethnic Uyghurs and other minorities in concentration camps. Look, I get it. The Chinese Communist Party needs the cash. Ethnic cleansing isn't cheap. Meanwhile, China's foreign minister says China is big but non-threatening, like a panda. I actually agree. They are just like a panda. This panda. The foreign minister added that paranoia toward China is a highly dangerous disease. Don't worry, the Communist Party has a treatment center where they can cure you of your disease. Recently I did an episode about how China is planning to weaponize rare earth metals to fight the US. Well, now, the US Army is going to develop their own rare earth plant. The move would mark the first financial investment by the US military into commercial-scale rare earths production since World War II's Manhattan Project built the first atomic bomb. I really don't think that's the result China was going for. Democrats and Republicans once again agree. This time on a new defense bill that would ban Chinese-made buses and rail cars. The idea is instead of giving that money to Chinese state-owned corporations, give that money to American companies to build America's buses and subways. Also, American companies are probably a bit less likely to build a subway car that will spy on us. It's been a year since 2 Canadian citizens were put in Chinese jail. Their crime? Being citizens of a country that arrested a rich Chinese person for breaking the law. Justice, with Chinese characteristics. Well, after a year in jail, there's some really good news for the 2 men. They might actually get a trial. Nothing like being jailed for a year without trial. Did I mention they haven't been allowed to speak to a lawyer or to their families? Something to think about the next time you visit China. On the bright side, the Canadians haven't been alone. A new report by the Committee to Protect Journalists says China just beat out Turkey as the top jailer of journalists. Man, Xi Jinping is really winning all the awards. Library officials in China's Gansu province have started burning books that are not politically correct. That happened back in October after the Ministry of Education ordered libraries to get rid of inappropriate books. Burning books! Yes, the Chinese Communist Party is really getting back to its roots. Although honestly, this new campaign really needs to step it up. They did it so much more efficiently in Mao Zedong's time. But this story took a weird twist when the book-burning librarians got in trouble. That's because this story went viral on Chinese social media this week and sparked a huge backlash. Yeah, burn the books, but not in public. Jeez. For years, big tech companies like Microsoft, Google, and Apple have been desperately trying to get into the China market. even going so far as doing research with Chinese military universities. Well, too bad for them, because China is banning foreign tech in government and public offices. Gosh, I really feel bad for these tech companies. More debt trap diplomacy. These are the Faroe Islands. They're pretty much autonomous, but they are part of Denmark. The Chinese Communist Party has made it clear, if the Faroe Islands wants a trade deal, they had better accept Chinese telecom giant Huawei. Now, the United States has been encouraging everyone to avoid Huawei since it's closely linked to the Chinese military and is a huge national security concern. But for places like the Faroe Islands, Chinese money is a heck of a lot more appealing than no money. And Chinese money comes with Chinese state-backed companies like Huawei. And finally, 11 Chinese migrants tried to smuggle themselves into the US by hiding inside furniture and appliances. That's right, to sneak into America, people are doing this and this. America, so great, it's worth hiding in a washing machine. And that does it for this week's China News Headlines. What do you think? Leave your comments below. And as I've mentioned before, YouTube demonetizes episodes like this because they're too controversial a subject for advertisers. We would have been run out of business years ago if it weren't for fan support through the crowdfunding website Patreon. So as a thank you to these fans, I answer their questions at the end of some of my episodes. This question comes from Joe King. Will Joker face tattoos gain popularity as this technology becomes more widespread? Will China Uncensored offer semi-permanent versions in the merch shop? Wide, super wide, and extremely wide smile editions would make a fun holiday gift idea. And no more mistimed family photos. That's in reference to a recent episode about emotion recognition technology China's pushing. The idea is Chinese facial recognition AI can predict if someone will commit a crime based on their facial expressions. So, would it work to have everyone in China dress up like the Joker? Unfortunately, no, that wouldn't throw off the emotion recognition technology. That's because the emotion recognition technology doesn't work very well in the first place. In other words, I'm pretty sure the Chinese Communist Party will continue to arrest anyone they want for whatever reason they want. And that's the killing joke. Thanks for your question. And thank you everyone for watching and for supporting China Uncensored. If you're not a patron yet, join our 50-cent army. Go to patreon.com/China Uncensored and contribute. The link is below. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.